I took the fire lookout job because I needed the isolation. The posting said the tower was decommissioned but still used for forestry observation during high-risk seasons. It was late fall when I arrived, too cold for tourists, too early for heavy snow. The ranger who drove me up didn't talk much, just pointed out landmarks along the winding mountain road and reminded me there was no cell service past mile 12. The tower stood above the tree line, skeletal and lonely against a gray sky. When he dropped me off, he said, "Radio works, generator works, door locks. Don't leave the tower at night unless you have to." I laughed and asked why. He just shrugged. "You'll see." The first 2 days were uneventful. I swept the cabin, tested the binoculars, inventoried supplies. The tower creaked constantly, metal adjusting to temperature shifts, wind sliding across the supports. It was the kind of place where you had to get used to noise. The forest below stretched endlessly, dense pine, steep ravines, and old logging cuts long reclaimed by growth. No trails nearby, no campsites, no reason for anyone to be out there this time of year. That's why the movement caught my eye on the third evening. Through the binoculars, I saw someone walking far below along the tree line. Not on a trail, just moving between trees. At first, I assumed it was a hunter, but there was something off. He wasn't carrying anything, no pack, no rifle, and he wasn't walking in any consistent direction. He'd move 10 yards, stop, stand still, then change direction slightly, like he was searching. I radioed the ranger station. They said no hunting permits were active in that sector. I watched the figure until the light faded and the forest swallowed him. That night, I heard footsteps on the stairs. The tower had a long metal staircase spiraling up from the ground. When wind hit it right, it rattled. I'd already learned that. But this wasn't rattling. It was deliberate, slow, even spacing between steps. Clang, clang, clang. I turned off the lantern and froze. The steps continued, halfway up, then stopped. I waited. Nothing. After 10 minutes, I grabbed the flashlight and opened the trapdoor. No one. The forest below was still. The staircase empty. The next day, I searched through the binoculars constantly. Around noon, I spotted him again. Closer this time. He wasn't wandering now. He was standing in a clearing, staring directly up at the tower. Too far to see details, but close enough to know he wasn't moving, just looking at me. I radioed again. The ranger sounded irritated. Probably a lost hiker. Lost hikers don't stand in one place for an hour, I said. He promised to note it. That night, the footsteps came again. This time, they climbed higher. Clang, clang, clang. I could hear the metal flexing with weight. They reached the landing just below the trapdoor, stopped. Then a single, slow knock echoed through the floor beneath me. I didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe. 5 minutes passed. Then I heard the steps descend. I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I forced myself to look. There were footprints in the frost at the base of the stairs. One set, leading up and leading back down. On the 5th day, I didn't see him at all. I almost convinced myself I'd imagined the intensity of it. Isolation does strange things to perception. That night, there were no footsteps. Instead, there was a voice. Faint at first. "Hello?" It drifted upward through the trees. Not loud, not panicked, just calling. "Hello?" It circled the base of the tower, slowly walking. "I know you're up there." My chest tightened. The voice was calm, friendly even. "I just want to come up. It's cold." I stayed silent. The trapdoor handle rattled, just once. Then the staircase began to groan again, but this time, faster, heavy footsteps charging upward. I grabbed the emergency flare gun. The steps reached the top landing. The handle twisted violently. The trapdoor shuddered under impact. He slammed against it again and again. Metal screeched. I fired the flare through the small observation hatch. It exploded in red light outside, bathing the tower in blood-colored glow. The banging stopped instantly. Silence. When I looked out, no one was there, but the staircase was still swaying, like something heavy had just been on it. At dawn, the ranger arrived unannounced, said he had a feeling. We went down together. There were no footprints, no marks on the door, no dents in the metal, nothing. He told me I looked exhausted, asked if I wanted to finish the season. I didn't. As we drove away, I looked back at the tower, and I swear, halfway up the staircase, a figure stood watching us leave. My brother Caleb and I rented the cabin because it was isolated. That was the selling point. No neighbors, no nearby town, just forest and mountains in every direction. The listing described it as perfect for unplugging, solar backup, wood stove, private well, four-wheel drive recommended in winter. We brought chains anyway. The road up was narrow and half buried in snow. By the time we reached the cabin, the sun was already dropping behind the ridge. It looked smaller than the photos. Dark wood siding, one porch light, tall pines pressing in close around it, like they were trying to reclaim it. Caleb laughed and said, "If we get murdered, this is definitely the place." I laughed too, at the time. Inside it was clean, but old. One main room with a wood stove, a small kitchen, a ladder leading up to a loft where two beds sat under a slanted ceiling. Windows on every wall, but the forest stood so close that even during the day it felt dim. The owner had left a printed note on the counter. "If the power goes out, stay inside. Do not try to leave until daylight." We assumed that was about wildlife or the road conditions. That first night, nothing happened, just wind. The kind that hits mountain cabins in long, low bursts. Snow brushed against the windows. The stove popped and cracked as the wood burned down. It felt peaceful. The next afternoon, the storm rolled in harder. Heavy snowfall. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. By 5 p.m., the dirt road we came in on was completely buried. Then, the power went out. No flicker, just gone. The cabin fell into total blackness except for the stove's orange glow. Caleb swore under his breath. We lit lanterns and checked the breaker box. Nothing tripped. The solar backup system didn't kick on. The silence after the power died felt different, thicker, like the cabin had been sealed off from the world. The first knock came at 9:13 p.m. 3 slow taps on the front door. Not pounding, not frantic, just calm, intentional. We stared at each other. No headlights had come up the drive, no engine noise, no crunching tires in snow. Caleb grabbed the flashlight and stepped toward the door. "Probably a branch," he muttered. But branches don't knock 3 times in perfect rhythm. He opened the door fast. The porch was empty. Snow falling straight down. The untouched powder showed no footprints. Not on the porch, not leading up to it. Nothing. An hour later, it happened again. 3 knocks, this time from the back door. That door didn't even have a proper porch, just 2 wooden steps that dropped into waist-deep snow. We didn't open it. Instead, we checked every window. That's when I saw it. A shape standing beyond the tree line, maybe 40 yards out. Too dark for details, but tall, still, facing the cabin. I called Caleb over. By the time he looked, it was gone. Around midnight, the temperature inside dropped sharply. The stove was still burning strong, but cold air seemed to be seeping from somewhere. Then we heard it. Movement above us. On the roof. Slow dragging sounds. Back and forth. Back and forth. Snow slid off the shingles and thudded to the ground. Caleb chambered around in the shotgun we'd brought for peace of mind. We stepped outside together, circled the cabin with flashlights. The roof was thick with smooth, undisturbed snow. No tracks, no slide marks, nothing. We barely slept. In the morning, the storm had eased, and that's when we saw the footprints. They surrounded the cabin, dozens of them, encircling the walls, stopping at every window, at both doors. But here's what made my stomach drop. They didn't lead toward the cabin. They started at the walls, like someone had stepped out of the siding and then walked away. Each trail ended abruptly about 10 feet out. No return path, no continuation, just gone. We tried calling the owner. No signal. We tried starting the truck. It turned over, but the driveway was buried too deep to move. We were stuck. That second night was worse. No knocking at first. Just silence. Then 3 taps on the wall behind the stove, from inside the cabin. Caleb and I both stared at it. 3 more taps from the ceiling above the loft. But we were both downstairs. We searched the entire place. Closets, under beds, cabinets. Nothing. When we came back into the main room, the front door was slightly open. We both knew we had locked it. Snow had drifted across the threshold. Still no footprints. Around 2 a.m., I woke to whispering. Not loud, not clear words, just the sound of someone speaking softly. Close. Very close. I sat up in the loft. Caleb was asleep in the other bed. The whispering was coming from below. I leaned over the loft railing. The main room was empty, but the whispering continued, right near the base of the ladder. Then it stopped, and something began climbing. Slowly. Wood creaking under weight, 1 rung at a time. I grabbed Caleb and shook him awake. The climbing stopped instantly. We aimed the shotgun down the ladder. Nothing there. But the cold air that rolled up from below felt unnatural, like standing in front of an open freezer. We didn't wait for morning. At 4 a.m. we started digging the truck out manually. Snow still falling lightly, the forest completely still. Halfway through clearing the tires, Caleb froze. "Don't move," he whispered. I followed his gaze. At the edge of the trees, 4 shapes stood, spaced evenly apart. Too tall to be deer, too narrow to be bears. Just silhouettes, watching. We threw the last of the snow aside and got in the truck. The engine struggled, then caught. As we reversed, I looked back once. The shapes were closer. Not walking, just closer. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway. A week later, we checked the listing. It was gone. When I searched satellite images months later, the cabin was still there, but the tree line looked different. Closer, almost touching the walls. I thought storage facilities were safe. Bright lights, cameras, keypad gates. But they're only secure when someone's watching, and no one watches them overnight. I rented Unit G15 because it was cheap and close to the back fence. The manager, Rick, was mid-60s, friendly but distracted. He kept mentioning how quiet the facility was at night. "Almost too quiet," he joked. My neighboring unit, G14, had a thick industrial lock covered in rust. "Been empty a while," Rick said when I asked. That should have comforted me. It didn't. The first incident was small, my lock hanging open. The second was the knocking. 3 slow knocks from the shared back wall. When I asked Rick to check G14, he insisted it was vacant. "Alarm would trigger if someone opened it," he said. But the alarm system only covered the outer perimeter, not the individual units. The scratching started a week later, long dragging sounds across the metal wall. Then tapping, like someone tracing the inside surface with their fingernails. I pounded back once. The scratching stopped immediately. Then 3 knocks answered, deliberate, measured. I didn't respond again. I decided to stay past closing, hide inside, and see what was happening. At 10 p.m., the gate buzzed shut. The overhead lights switched to motion sensor mode, leaving long stretches in darkness. At 10:12, a door rolled open somewhere in the distance. Slow, metal grinding against metal. Footsteps echoed down the lane. They stopped directly outside G14. I couldn't see from my cracked door, but I heard it. A lock clicking open, the door rolling up. Then silence. A full minute passed. Then 3 knocks on my back wall. Harder this time. The metal flexed inward slightly. Then a voice, low, close. "I know you're there." My chest tightened. "You've been coming here a lot." The voice sounded almost amused. "I don't like being listened to." I didn't breathe. "I don't like being watched." Then something slammed against the shared wall so hard it dented inward. I stumbled backward. The wall shook again and again. Boxes toppled, shelves rattled. Then silence. Footsteps retreating. A door closing. Lock clicking. At sunrise, I demanded Rick open G14. He hesitated, but cut the lock. The door creaked upward. The unit was empty. Completely empty. Concrete floor, bare walls. Except, on the shared wall, deep scratches and 3 dents, exactly where my wall had buckled. Rick stared at them. "That wasn't there before," he whispered. Then he checked his clipboard, his face drained of color. "G14 isn't empty." I felt my stomach drop. "Who rents it?" I asked. He swallowed. "You do." According to the paperwork, when I signed for G15, G14 had been leased under my name as well. Same signature, same ID number, dated 3 days before I ever came to the facility. I never signed for it. I never stepped inside it, but the system showed I had access. That night, I drove past the facility once more. Row G was dark, completely dark, except for one unit light glowing faintly near the back. The door was slightly open, just enough to show darkness inside, and I swear something shifted in that darkness, like it was waiting for me to come back, watching. We threw the last of the snow aside and got in the truck. The engine struggled, then caught. As we reversed, I looked back once. The shapes were closer. Not walking, just closer. We didn't stop until we hit the main highway. A week later, we checked the listing. It was gone. When I searched satellite images months later, the cabin was still there, but the tree line looked different, closer, almost touching the walls.